Hello there, friends, true believers, and newcomers alike. I'm Superfly Comics Guy, bringing you another Omnibus review today. This one thanks to The Greek Leader, one of the first commenters on this channel, and they suggested we take a look at Miles Morales Spider-Man Omnibus Volume 1. So here we are. We'll be taking a look at the cover, the spine, the contents collected, the build quality, and of course, a flip through where I discuss some of my thoughts, opinions, and recommendations. So, if you like the video, you know how to show it. And if you're a nerd like me, leave a comment for me down below or take a page out of the Greek Leader's notebook and let me know what other books you want me to cover on the channel. And if I have them, I'll be happy to take a look. But with that out of the way, go grab your Spidey Halloween costumes because it's time to dive into the world of Miles Morales as Spider-Man. Let's do this. Alrighty everybody, so here we have the dust jacket to the Miles Morales Spider-Man Omnibus Volume 1. Yes, that is what I'm choosing to call it. I know it's called, this older printing was called Miles Morales, The Ultimate Spider-Man, and then there was a sequel omnibus called Spider-Man Miles Morales, which confused so many people about which one comes first. And rightfully so, because that was a stupid naming scheme. But I think Marvel realized that because this book is being reprinted later this year, and they're changing the name to Miles Morales Spider-Man Omnibus Volume 1, and then that sequel will be Volume 2. Much more logical. This is an older printing, as I mentioned, so this was the only cover available back then. The newer printing isn't going to have this cover. It's going to have two new covers. It's going to have one standard and one direct market variant cover. So take your pick which one you like better. Here is what the spine looks like, Miles Morales Ultimate Spider-Man, and the back. Collecting Ultimate Comics Spider-Man 1 through 28 and 16.1, Spider-Man 1 through 5, Cataclysm Ultimate Spider-Man 1 through 3, Ultimate Spider-Man 200, Miles Morales Ultimate Spider-Man 1 through 12, and material from Ultimate Fallout number 4. And with a cover price of $125 US, $158 Canadian. I picked this one up about a year ago for a pretty decent price because it came a little bit beat up. It got some bumps and corner dings, but otherwise pretty good condition. Let's take a look under the dust jacket. Bam, here we are under the dust jacket, featuring an incredible wraparound cover, which I absolutely have to show you, featuring Miles and the ever creepy, ever imposing Green Goblin. But let's start talking about some of the contents inside and stories. All right, here we are, flip through time. And as I always say, no spoilers, but keep in mind I'm flipping through artwork, so some of that might contain a spoiler, but otherwise I won't be discussing spoilers myself. So here we are, Ultimate Spider-Man Miles Morales. If you're not familiar with the Ultimate Universe, I did talk about it a little bit when I reviewed Ultimate Spider-Man Omnibus Volume 1, the very first video on this channel. My God, how strange it feels to think back to that time. But Ultimate Comics, or Ultimate Spider-Man, was a series from the early 2000s where they did a modern retelling of Spider-Man's origin. They trimmed the fat and just focused on the core of the character, telling the best possible stories they could without having to worry about years and years of continuity. So Spider-Man Miles Morales, or Ultimate Spider-Man Miles Morales, whatever you want to refer it to, however you want to refer to it, was the follow-up to that series. So first you had Ultimate Spider-Man with Peter Parker, and then you have Miles following in those footsteps. And yeah, so you're getting Miles' origin story here. You're getting the introduction of his supporting cast, such as his friend Genki, who, come on, the MCU completely ripped off and used for the Ned Leeds character. I mean, look at him. You know, and his other supporting cast, like his parents, his uncle, his other friends at school. And look, I'll be honest. I was a Miles denier when this series first came out and when the character first appeared. I thought, why are we bothering to introduce a new Spider-Man who has to start from scratch and learn about power and responsibility and what it means to be Spider-Man when we literally just did that with Ultimate Spider-Man with Peter Parker? But the movie Into the Spider-Verse and the recent Spider-Man video games on PlayStation really opened my eyes to how great of a character Miles can really be. So I decided to give this a try. And man, I'm glad I did. This was a great book overall. And a really quick read, honestly. I was foolish to dismiss it so unfairly before, and this just really taught me to be more aware of prejudice and to be careful not to let it get the better of me. But yeah, this is all about Miles growing into the role of Spider-Man and learning what that name means. Speaking of, there's actually a really cool miniseries in here called Spider-Men, where Miles actually gets to meet the Spider-Man from the main universe. And I really enjoyed that because there's this humorous sequence, especially towards the end of that, where the main Spidey just starts to list off a whole bunch of advice he has for Miles, and it's full of tongue-in-cheek pokes at some of the goofy stories from Spidey's comic history. It's great. But yeah, there's lots of similarities and references to Peter's origin from the original Ultimate Spider-Man series. You could argue it's a little self-indulgent, Bendis referencing himself. But I'm such a huge fan of the original Ultimate Spidey run that I didn't really mind. I do feel like it stumbles a little bit in the beginning, where his best friend Genki will be telling him, you need to become Peter Parker. You need to study everything he did, everything he was about, and just be him. And you know what? That's probably what contributed to my dislike of Miles back in the day, because it just felt like he was repeating what Peter already did. He just felt like he was being a clone of Peter. Wait, clone? Clone! Oh, sorry guys, I blacked out there for a few minutes. Not sure what happened, but anyway, what I was saying, yeah, it felt like Miles was just trying too hard to be Peter at the beginning, but then you have to realize that's the point. That's all part of his arc. He needs to learn to be himself, not an imitation of someone else. And I think that's told really well here. Another central pillar of the story here is family. You get to see how Miles' double life as the new Spider-Man impacts each of his relationships differently with his mom, his dad, his uncle, and his friends. And each of them has something unique to toss into the mix there. And speaking of something unique, you're getting a lot of different villains in here, such as Ultimate Scorpion, the Prowler, Venom, and of course, as we saw on the board cover, the intimidating Ultimate Green Goblin. So there's lots of good action in here too. Some negatives of the book. I found that Jefferson Davis, Miles' dad, was written pretty annoying in this book. I thought he was done way better in Into the Spider-Verse, for example, or those PlayStation games that I just mentioned. I didn't really like how he was written and how he behaved in this book, though he does have kind of an interesting arc overall. I just thought it was done better elsewhere. Another thing that was kind of annoying while reading is that some of the panel layouts can be a little bit weird and kind of counterintuitive to what you might expect. For example, a lot of the time they'll stretch horizontally across, and it'll just kind of mess with your reading order because you might accidentally start the panel below because that's what you expect, but it turns out you actually have to read across. So, and that actually happened to me a few times. Maybe I'm just inept, but you might find that kind of distracts you a little bit. And there are some kind of big events that happen in this book, like Ultimate Cataclysm, and there's a lot of time skips around that event. They're explained relatively well, but I do kind of wish that more of the context around the event was included, rather than just having to read a summary or whatever. But it's not too bad. Something that might annoy some people is that there's a lot of cliffhangers at the end of every issue, but it didn't bother me because, as I mentioned before, it's a really quick read, and I think that's what actually, those cliffhangers are part of what contributed to that, because a lot of the issues will just end on a cliffhanger, and then it forces you to read the next one and, keep following the story. And real quick, we can talk about some of the artwork in this book. For example, here early on, we have some artwork by Sarah Pichelli, I'm not entirely, I think it should be Pichelli, I don't know, someone can maybe correct me. But here you have some of her artwork. Back in the day, I wasn't a fan of her artwork at first glance, but reading through this book really allowed me to appreciate it more. Her art makes it feel like you're watching a movie because the panels flow together really, really well, and she's very adept at capturing just subtleties and nuances of each character, especially facial expressions and emotions. I used to think that it was really cartoony looking, and that kind of put me off, but I think that's the point. It's just the right amount of cartoony to convey a young, inexperienced Spider-Man. So she does a lot of the early parts of the book, and the other main artist is David Marquez. And he does a lot of the artwork in the later half of the book where Miles is a little bit older, and David Marquez is fantastic. I prefer his style to more. Something about it is just so aesthetically pleasing, but he draws some really fantastic panels. Really catches your eye. So yeah, needless to say, the artwork is pretty strong in this book. And yeah, as I mentioned before, it's just really cool watching Miles interact with other characters from the Ultimate Universe, like S.H.I.E.L.D. and the Ultimate Spider-Woman, Cloak and Dagger here. Very, very cool. And here we are now with our beloved extras section. So you got a bunch of alternate artwork and variants here. Variant covers. You gotta love it. Mark Bagley. Always a pleasure to see him drawing Spider-Man. I do like that. That's a pretty creative cover for the Spider-Man miniseries that I mentioned. But yeah, mostly, if I remember correctly, it's mostly just variants that you're getting in here. Okay, there are some in-progress pencils and sketches here. There's that cover to the Dust Jacket by Fiona Staples. Some more variants. Lots and lots of variants. And this was cool. This was a joy for me to look through. Just the cover gallery featuring all the covers of the original Ultimate Spider-Man series up until this point where this book starts, the beginning of Miles's saga. So cool to revisit all those covers that I remember reading. But yeah. Oh, and of course concluding with a final small little letters page here. But there you go. As for build quality, we've got 1,168 pages in this book. And there is that eye, a really fantastic one. It's worth mentioning, though, that this is the second printing of this book that I have. This is, and the first printing was notorious for having terrible binding, where the pages would separate from that inner spine there. But later printings didn't seem to have those issues, and because of that great eye, you're getting pretty much no gutter loss. Yeah, none. You can see there's lots of, as I mentioned, not really spread pages, but where the panels will kind of transition from one page to another. So it's nice that there's very, very minimal gutter loss. And as for page quality, it's pretty average. Not super thick, not super thin. There's a minor amount of page bleed, but I don't ever really remember it being particularly distracting in any case. So it's good enough. Now, you don't get a table of contents or page numbers in this book, but you do get this page here towards the beginning that has some of the contents. So that could help you plan out your reading if you want to read specific arcs at a time. So that's nice, I guess, but I would have preferred there to be an actual table of contents and page numbers. Alrighty, so just wrapping up here. I think fans of Into the Spider-Verse or Spider-Man, those Spider-Man PlayStation games I mentioned, will love this, and really, just fans of Spidey in general. I had my doubts going in, and look, I don't think it hits the heights that the original Ultimate Spider-Man run does, but Bendis does a really good job here of showing you why you should care about Miles and how he earns that all-important title of Spider-Man. Even if you're somebody who doesn't typically like the Bendis style of writing, I'd still argue that this is worth giving a try and that you'll probably still like it. As for starting points, I do think this is a great starting point for reading Spider-Man comics with an asterisk. And the asterisk is, if you have not read the original Ultimate Spider-Man run with Peter Parker, this will spoil the ending of that for you. I do think you'll get the most enjoyment out of this if you've read that Ultimate Spider-Man series first, but you can jump into this without reading that and still enjoy it, but just keep in mind it'll spoil some stuff that happened before, because this takes place after that. But that's it for my review of Miles Morales Spider-Man Omnibus Volume 1. Let me know what you thought about the video or the book if you've read it. Are you a fan of Bendis? What do you think of Miles? Are you looking forward to the Into the Spider-Verse sequel coming out? Or are you a gamer like me and have you played the Spider-Man PlayStation games? Let me know. Sound off in the comments. But thank you so much for checking out this video today. I hope to catch you in another one real soon. So you have yourself a great day. I've been Superfly Comics Guy, and until next time, keep reading. Bye, guys.